we're going to go back to the audits, as something I'm sure that you all have been following. And this isn't just about the audits. This is about the entire narrative of I don't even know what to call these people anymore. We'll call them the radical left, the deep, blank I can't say on YouTube, the shadow government, whatever you want to call these people. They're panicking. And this, where you're seeing it unfold and you're seeing their narrative collapse, you're seeing the media freak out. And of course, you've got Biden over in G7, which if anybody doubted who the rightful person to win was, which I have to be careful of, as what we're saying here in this show, covering the outside, I have to be careful about certain language. But if anybody would be doubting who the rightful winner was in America, G7 on the world stage with Biden and his bumbles shows it all. So we're going to get into this. First, I want to just say a quick hello to everyone that's joined me today. I see that some of you folks, this is your first time joining. Thank you. It's exciting that whenever I see new people showing up, it's absolutely wonderful because it just shows me that not only something I'm saying is worth watching, but it's also that the fact that you are all helping spread this show and spread this content, which I really appreciate, because the censors over at YouTube and Google and Facebook, etc., are doing everything they can to censor us, including deleting subscribers, deleting views, even people on Facebook Messenger. They can't even share my videos. It comes up. So to me, it just tells me, hey, I'm over the target. Right. So what we're talking about on this show, the comments that I'm getting back from you, this is exactly what they are scared of us talking about, which to me, this is what gives me confidence to keep going forward. It gives me encouragement because like I said, we're hitting them where it hurts, and this is what we need to be doing. So thank you everyone from joining. I see I've got Phil from Australia joining, Anita from Tennessee. Again, people from all over the world that are coming in to watch this. Even you have folks saying that people have been deleted. Yeah, so I thank you, Gonzalez, saying that if they delete me, I'll just subscribe again. Thank you, Ingrid. Thank you for joining from the Netherlands. Fantastic to have people coming. As I've said over and over again, this isn't about America. Again, Andre from South Africa, fantastic. Here from Hungary, Gerjo, see you. Great to see you here. So yeah, this isn't about America. This is about the whole world. And President Trump is not the leader of America. I see President Trump as the leader of people that want freedom. They want to escape from the grip of the globalists. Trump is the person that is leading people out of that. So again, thank you for coming. A quick thing to say here. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, I recommend you have. You do. If you have subscribed, just check and make sure you're still subscribed, because people are getting unsubscribed. YouTube's even sending me, warnings, and they're going to start, clearing out because of spam, whatever that means. Also, make sure you've hit the little notification bell. For those of you that are joining and watching live on Rumble, thank you so much, and thank you for supporting a platform that values free speech and is not willing to censor its users. So, and if you are watching on YouTube, I recommend that you at least go over to Rumble, create an account on there, follow me on Rumble, because I have no idea how long I'll be on YouTube. I've got a target on my back. I have since the very first video, The Plot to Steal America, which perhaps that's how you found me, through our President Trump sharing that. From day one, I had a target on my back. And then it came the articles from the leftist media attacking me and everything, just trying to discredit everything. And that's what we're going to go over today. We're going to see the overall story flow of today as we're looking at the audits, what's happening with the audits, how those tie into what's happening in G7, what happened in DC on January 6th, and even some of Putin's comments about that. And then looking at how they are on the offense, how the folks in the DOJ and the crony White House are trying to come after patriots for trying to protect our country. And then a little bit of good news at the end. And if you stick around for the very end, I have a very funny thing that I'm going to be going on at the very end. So I see Kat Wheeler asking if there's a live chat function on Rumble. There is, and so you can use a live chat on there. Right now, I use a company called Restream, which is what it unites all my chats. So I'm seeing comments from Facebook and YouTube that are kind of pulling in together. That's why if you occasionally see what says Restream bot, it's just someone that's actually commenting across both platforms. Unfortunately, though, on Rumble right now, the live chat can't plug into that, so I won't see. Which in the future, I should pull up the Rumble comments as well to be able to see those. Right now, I'm just focusing on the one central thing. Yeah, it's the club. That's exactly like in over there, and like Macron said, it's the club, and as Trump is referred to. So let's go ahead and jump into what's happening in Arizona. And the first story we're going to pull up, which this just frames some of the next few stories. Maybe you saw this, maybe you didn't. So this is, basically showing that we're seeing the initial steps of the, Biden's Department of Justice setting things up to not only discredit the audits, but actually to go after the auditors, which is kind of interesting because you would think that the Department of Justice would be looking to see, hey, was the election done properly? Let's take a look at your audit evidence and go after the evidence and go after what was potentially wrong with it. But instead, they're going after the people that are conducting the audits, which you see is the same narrative that whether it's the DOJ or the mainstream media they're pushing, is that the folks that are pushing for the audits are all extremists, conspiracy theorists. We've been associated with the one group with the 17th letter that I can't say on YouTube, which we'll be talking about today, all as ways to frame the conservatives and frame the people that value freedom, to push them aside and put them in jail. But as we're going to see today, their plan is not working and their narrative is collapsing. People are seeing through. Exactly. Don Ross saying the Department of Propaganda. Yes, that's really it. The media in America, unfortunately, which becomes the world's media in a lot of ways, right? The media here have truly become a propaganda arm of the globalists, and I think even more so of the Chinese Communist Party, which I'd like to do a deep dive into that at some point and cover the media and its ties to the Chinese Communist Party, because it goes deep for quite some time. So I'm glad that you are tuning in to the more independent media like myself, reading the Epoch Times, some of the other media that aren't afraid to stand up and tell the truth. So looking at what's happening in Arizona, I'm not going to dive too much into this article. I want to frame the discussion. This is on June 11th. The Attorney General, this is of the Department of Justice. This is Biden's Attorney General, Merrick Garland, announces that his DOJ will scrutinize any post-election audits for evidence of voting law violations. Now, again, it might sound like they're trying to do the right thing, but that's not what they're doing here, right? So what, I think this is Joe Hoft over at the Gateway Pundit. What he's saying is that the corrupt DOJ and its FBI totally ignored the flood of election crimes in the 2020 election. So it's no surprise now that corrupt AG decides to threaten any person who's involved in election audits to prevent them from looking into the election crimes. And there's the F word I can't say that were committed. Let me full screen this in case you want to read along. So now I'll have to censor a few of the words I'm saying here in this because of the YouTube's censorship, unfortunately. The DOJ totally ignored crimes that were committed in 2020. Everywhere we turned, there were crimes and corruption at every level in the process that were ignored by the mainstream media, DOJ, the FBI, et cetera, big tech. So Gateway Pundit, they reported on it, as you see everywhere on there. But what I want to show you here is the response from the Department of Justice. The Attorney General says that he and his gang of attorneys and investigators are going to scrutinize every single action taken during these audits to intimidate and prevent the audits from taking place. I'm not going to show the video of this talking head here. It is just another tool in the toolbox of probably the Chinese Communist Party, allegedly, potentially. I don't know, I have to be careful with some things I say. But it's, again, this person on Twitter, Cameron Rodriguez, says panic mode. You're over the target when Attorney General Merrick Garland announces that the U.S. Justice Department will scrutinize any post-election audits for evidence of voting law violations. So again, he's saying we know they would do something. Now they're taking action, right? They're making it clear that they want to be, taking action on this, because what we're seeing is that whether it's Arizona or Michigan or Georgia, the people in the states, right? They're acting under the Constitution to carry out these audits and to protect the integrity of the democracy that holds us together, allows us to vote freely and elect our leaders as outlined in the Constitution. Now, the Constitution also clearly stipulates that it's the states that conduct the federal elections. Okay, the government, it purposely does this because the founding fathers, they knew that if the centralized government, the federal government, they knew that if that arm of the government, the central government, took control of the elections, then that would allow for so many loopholes, right? Which we see, this is in HR 1. You see, it would create so many loopholes for the elections to be tampered with and controlled, right? So if you look at, say even communist countries, or you look down at Venezuela, right? Do they have elections? Yes, they do have elections. Are those elections fair and honest? No. And if you ask most people in Venezuela, they will tell you. If you look at a lot of the voting machines that have, relate to Venezuela, I can't go too far into that because I've already had certain threats from certain companies. You can see exactly what happened there. But back to America, though, America was really set up in a way that the states are responsible for Constitution. And so here what we have is the federal level attorney general that's basically saying that, hey, we don't like what you're doing in your state, so we're going to get involved, which directly violates the Constitution. So what has the response been? There's actually two particular responses from folks out in Arizona that I find to be just absolutely amazing. So let's take a look at these really quick. So one of them, this is the Arizona lawmaker that responds to AG Garland. This is shortly after he came out and said that. She says, quote, "You will not touch Arizona ballots or machines unless you want to spend time in prison." So this is incredible. Again, this is the power of the Constitution. What gives her, a senator in Arizona, what gives her the ability to threaten the federal level, the Attorney General of the United States? What's the Constitution? The Constitution rules all. The Constitution is above what the federal government is doing. They are acting under the Constitution, right? And as much as they're trying to trample on it and shred it, the more we can go back to understanding the Constitution and basing our actions upon the Constitution and find our strength there, the more power we have. And that's what the Constitution does for us. So if you haven't read the Constitution, I recommend you getting familiar with it. I recently was on an airplane and got a chance to reread it just to brush up on it again. I encourage that all Americans should be reading the Constitution. So with this Arizona lawmaker, let me jump into here and just show you a little more of what she said here. Let's see. There we go. So this was last week. Earlier on Friday, the Biden DOJ warned state lawmakers that if they proceeded to audit the elections, they'll be targeted by the Biden admin. So here we go. The U.S. Constitution specifically gives powers to the states to regulate federal elections as they see fit. You would think, a little tongue-in-cheek, you would think the Attorney General of the U.S. would know this. Following the threats by the Biden regime, I love Gateway Pundit and their writing, former fighter pilot and Arizona State Senator Wendy Rogers warned Merrick Garland to stay in his lane. So she tweeted this, which is absolutely amazing. So in response to the video he put out, she tweeted, "You will not touch Arizona ballots or machines unless you want to spend time in an Arizona prison. Maybe you should focus on stopping terrorism." I don't think she's referring to the domestic terrorist threats of the white supremacists that the Biden administration is framing and going after. The Justice Department is one of the most corrupt institutions in the USA. And this is what's amazing to me, is that we are now at a point in our country with, I guess you could say, with enough people waking up to what's happening, where you've got senators publicly stating and accusing the Justice Department as being one of the most corrupt institutions in the USA. This is something people would probably whisper about 10 years ago. Maybe on Rush, you would hear him talking a little bit about this. But now this is out in the public. And the thing is that they're not disputing it. Like, this is becoming a known fact. The alphabet agencies, whether it's the DOJ, the FBI, the CIA. I was listening to something recently and an interview on Mike Adams, the health ranger, and one of the guys he was interviewing was talking about how he had said that I think the CIA is the English arm of the KGB. And it's like, oh, gosh, I never thought of it that way. But it's probably a better way of looking at it than thinking it's a government agency of the United States that's made to keep us safe. I think it's more accurate to look at it as basically an arm of a communist regime acting to control and push an agenda in the United States to basically move a more communist system into the United States, which we're seeing happen. We're seeing happen daily now. But there's also very, very strong opposition to that. So now, this was the senator's response. Now I want to take a look at what the response was from the Attorney General of Arizona. So this is incredible. I'm going to read this letter all the way through. It's not too long, but this is incredible. This is a very powerful letter. So this was June 14th, and this is a Mark Brnovich, who's the Attorney General of Arizona, which, if you remember recently, I think it was the Senate, I forget how it happened, but in Arizona, they stripped Katie Hobbs as the Secretary of State of her powers of overseeing the election, basically, and they passed them over to Mark Brnovich, the Attorney General. And listen to how Mark talks, and I would say, this is the guy that I want deciding the outcome of the elections. So he writes this letter: Dear Attorney General Garland, last week you made troubling comments about the ongoing efforts in states to ensure election integrity. Make this full screen for you so you can read along. I'll take off my little mug there. Your statements displayed an alarming disdain for state sovereignty as defined under the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution and the election provisions in Articles 1 and 2. Your comments followed a May 5th letter from Pamela Karlan of the DOJ's Civil Rights Division on the subject of the Arizona state's oversight of the Maricopa County audit. This letter appeared more interested in supporting the hysterical outcries of leftist pundits on cable television rather than the rule of law. My office is not amused by the DOJ's posturing and will not tolerate any effort to undermine or interfere with our state Senate's audit to reassure Arizonans of the accuracy of our elections. We stand ready to defend federalism and state sovereignty against any partisans' attacks or federal overreach. Incredible. It is important to remember that states created the federal government, not the other way around. You hear that? The states created the federal government, not the other way around. America's founders intentionally restrained the federal government's constitutional boundaries to ensure each state could flourish in unique ways. Today, our federal government has largely forgotten the founders' intent, but my office has not. There are no issues more important for states to prioritize than the integrity of our elections. This is the cornerstone of our republic, binding together the people's trust in the whole of government. Today, we see mistrust in our elections from Americans on all sides of the political spectrum. This should not be a partisan issue. States can and should take every opportunity to reassure all citizens that their vote counts. My office looks for ways to work alongside the federal government to uphold our laws within the constraints of the 10th Amendment and the election provisions in Articles 1 and 2. As I have demonstrated several times, however, Arizona will not sit back and let the Biden administration abuse its authority, refuse to uphold laws, or attempt to commandeer our state's sovereignty. I just want to say, boom, after reading that. That is incredible. So he outlines it right there. And this is, to me, this is the biggest update of what's happening in Arizona. Because if you look at, okay, everyone's wondering, okay, what's happening with the evidence? Are they finding things? Well, I'm going to cover a few things that have kind of emerged. There's a little bit murky stories about what's happening with the ballots. But to me, what's most important is this letter. And the fact that the Attorney General of Arizona is coming out like this and saying, look, we are not going to allow you to interfere with what we're doing here in Arizona. And he multiple times references the Constitution. And that's what we have to look for, right? A direct reference of the Constitution. That is exactly that's what I look for in any politician. Is, okay, there's a few things to look for. Okay, what is your stance if I'm saying, okay, is this politician a yay or nay? Last week, I went and I met a wonderful man, Joe Blystone, who's running for governor of Ohio. Fantastic guy. I want to have an interview with him. And, in talking to him, when I'm vetting, because I don't, unfortunately, these days, I don't trust anybody unless I look at what their stance is on a few things. Okay, what's your stance on the CCP, which Blystone has been very vocal about the CCP, thumbs up. What's your stance on the Constitution? He says, look, I don't even like calling myself a Republican. I refer to myself as a constitutional conservative. Another big one. He also talked about what happened in November last year. So these are the things I look at. You can see now so many of the rhinos that refuse to touch what happened in last year's elections. Well, I think that we're now seeing people are showing themselves for who they really are. And we get to make the decision now. So I think that we're seeing some big changes happening, and all the people that were against Trump and did not support him when he really needed their support, now they're running up against, for America first candidates, people that are putting the Constitution first, people that are putting America first. They're not bowing down to the mainstream media. So this is what I'm looking for. So again, Joe Blystone, if you're in Ohio, check him out. So far, I'm highly impressed with what he's running on, what he's talking about. And he's not a politician. He's a farmer. He's got a big beard, which of course I support the big beard and the cowboy hat that he wears. So he's working on getting DeWine out of office, which is absolutely a rhino. So anyway, back to what I saw happening with the Attorney General there out in Arizona. This is what gets my spine going. Oh, great. This is what raises the hair on the back of my neck in a good way. It's like, yes, people that are referencing the Constitution, saying this document that was written hundreds of years ago, this is what gives me the ability to reject your federal overreach, which is fantastic. Now, there's one story that I want to talk about as it relates to the audits, just to clear up some confusion, because one thing to look out for with these situations is there's a lot of misinformation being spread, and it could be intentional or unintentional. And a lot of times what happens is that people that are actually very good, maybe even patriots, somebody will give them information that they think is good that they might put out to the public that gets used against us. So I think it's always important even with my channel, don't take anything that I say for the absolute truth. Always do your own research, take everything with a grain of salt, and really learn to understand and trust who you're looking to. That's why for me, on this show, I try to show you where I'm finding the information. I'm not coming and giving you a 5-minute synopsis and telling you what to think. I'm saying, look, I'm discovering this at the same time that you are. I'm doing my research ahead of time, but I'm saying, here's what I found. What do you think? Here's an article about this. Here's a letter I just read. These are things that I'm finding. I want to share those with you. And so you can develop your own thoughts. And just so you know, in all the descriptions of the video, whether you're on Rumble or YouTube, in the description, you're going to find a link to everything I talk about on the show. So if I pull up a web page, that link is down there because you can go look at it for yourself. You can share it with a family member, etc. Because to me, this is how we have to fight the information war. It's not by passing around rumors and he said, she said. It's about researching, understanding what we're talking about, and sharing information, and fundamentally working together. And that's why I like to share my resources with you, so you can read these things, go talk to your family about them. Send this letter to someone that you know that maybe they're on the middle of things and they're not sure what to think. Send them that letter and say, look, you value the Constitution. Doesn't this make sense? They might say, actually, yeah, that's a really well put letter. That's far more effective, perhaps, than sharing a Tucker Carlson video they're going to look at and say, yeah, this guy is always saying this, or whatever. Give them the source and say, look, I took these conclusions away from it. You can read it and take your own conclusions away. I think that's the best way to help people awaken from the complete stupor they've been put into through the brainwashing and of the mockingbird mainstream media, which I'd love to cover that for a later show. So with what's happening, though, we tell a little quick side thing about disinformation. Let's look at something that happened. So there's an article that came out. This was the National File. Now, this came out, and this says that this was on June 14th. This was the big news that had come out, that the audit organizer says hundreds of thousands of ballots are missing in Arizona, and there's boxes full of blank ballots. So I can't say whether this is true or not. I'm going to share an Epoch Times article after this. It goes into it a little more detail and gives a different perspective. So this person is saying that this is Josh Barnett, an election organizer. So here they're saying that several 100,000 votes that were counted in Maricopa are associated with missing ballots, according to an audit organizer who's speaking regularly with people on the audit floor. So this is Josh Barnett, an audit organizer, who said, "We found a ballot shortage anywhere from 5 to 10% of the votes." He's saying that the ballots are missing. So here what's important. He says, quote, "I also know that there were boxes filled with blank ballots on those pallets." Ballots full of pallets from the song. There were blanks in there. He said, citing a person who is frequently at the audit site as part of the audit process. Okay, so again, this became a really big story. Now, the National File, they're writing the article, they're covering, saying what Josh Barnett, who's an organizer, said. But Barnett is pulling this information because he says he's citing a person who is frequently at the audit sites as part of the audit process. Now, could that person have fed him information? I don't know. But what I want to draw your attention to is an Epoch Times article that came out shortly after that. Okay, so this article, I'll make this full page for you so you want to read along. This one is saying that the Arizona Senate Audit Liaison disputes report of claiming hundreds of thousands of ballots missing. So the Epoch Times, I'm sure you've heard them by now. I talk about them quite a lot. This is where I want to go. This is where I often go to see, to find, I think, really more of a fair view. Because also there's a lot of media that they're just as biased towards the right as the mainstream media is biased towards the left. And the thing is I really don't want to bias. I appreciate, a place like Gateway Pundit. They have some good tongue-in-cheek stuff. They have a lot of good factual reporting. But I'd say of all the media, that Epoch Times, I think, truly does the best job of really staying in the middle of things. They don't, chase things off the track too much. So here, this article written by Zachary Stieber, Arizona Senate Audit Liaison disputes report claiming hundreds of thousands of ballots are missing. So spokespersons for the audit taking place in Arizona's largest county are pushing back on a report that claimed auditors have discovered hundreds of thousands of missing ballots. So this is from Ken Bennett. He says there's been no such finding yet. Ken Bennett is a former Arizona Republican Secretary of the State. So he confirmed there haven't been any missing ballots, and he talks about the fact that he says there's a report published by the National File, which I just showed you, and cited Josh Barnett, who's running for Arizona's 6th congressional district. He was described as an audit organizer who said that. So again, now Barnett wasn't available for a comment by the time that the press came. So the point is, and the reason I wanted to show you this is, A, you may have seen something shared on Twitter or social media that said, hey, hundreds of thousands of ballots are missing. But again, always go back to the sources, right? Again, yes, exactly, yada, yada, yada. Anonymous sources mean it's not true. If you recall, when The Atlantic published the story about Trump over, I think it was in France, that was speaking terribly about the disabled vets. This is the huge thing they published. It was based upon 4 anonymous sources. Okay, well, a source told me anonymously that Biden is actually an alien dressed up as a man, according to my sources. All right, does that make it true? Well, you should ask me who my sources are. Okay, no one told me that, but the point is that thank you, Pamela White, for that donation. I really appreciate that. The point is that you have to always look at your sources, and especially when it comes to something such as the audits. Whatever information that comes out of these audits, we have to have it be so official, because it's like, what did we see happening back in December of last year, November of last year, January? Courts were tossing things out left and right. So for me, when I'm looking at what's happening in Arizona, I'm going to be looking for probably what's going to be an official hearing by the Senate by the Republican Senate in Arizona, probably an official hearing where they're presenting their information that they've found. That's what I'm waiting for. I'm not going to be, look, it's playing on a lot of the emotions, the excitement of like, oh, well, someone said this and there's this, and we're all watching. And obviously, the whole nation, especially of patriots, we're all hanging on. We're on the edge, right? We're on the edge of America right now. So that's going to make us even more susceptible to taking this information and not really looking into it and taking this and saying, well, okay, that sounds about right. So I'm going to share this. So we have to be really, really careful about what we're allowing ourselves to believe and also what we're sharing, because as we're going to go into in a little bit, they are really trying to come after the Patriot movement to discredit us and say that we're full of conspiracies and all these things. And when they can plant information in that and they can have it spread really far, but then they can come out and prove exactly why it's wrong, right? That's what they do. That's how disinformation works, is you give them something fake, let them all run with it, and then you come out and bring out the evidence of why it's fake. And what it does, it just discredits a lot of people, and it really disheartens us. So again, just be careful with what we're looking at. But what we do know, I'll jump into the next story about the audits, is that basically the domino effect is happening. Now, this is an article, this is from late last week, but I wanted to bring it up because these are the bigger ramifications of what is happening with these audits. And this is what they're most scared of, is that what's happening in Arizona is encouraging a lot of other states and a lot of citizens to step up and talk to their representatives and say, hey, you should be investigating this. So what happened, against late last week, what they're saying here is that, I'll make this full screen for you, a freight train of state delegations coming Friday. So 9 states will visit, this was on Friday last week, the Arizona Audit Center. So what they're saying is that, again, you have the Audit War Room tweeting out, we have 9 state delegations touring the audit tomorrow. Stay tuned for updates. So the states that we're visiting, if I get down to it here, I'm not going to keep scrolling down. So basically, but the point with here to say is that this audit that's happening, it's not just about Arizona. And what they're doing is they're bringing representatives from multiple states coming in and looking exactly how they're doing things in Arizona, and they're pitching them. And they're basically saying, hey, this is what you should be doing in your own states. Okay. I see that Relax Farms asking, why is it mainstream media talking about these states touring? Well, they're scared of it. They are going to do everything possible to distract what's happening with these audits, to make up lies, to defame anybody that's talking about what's happening in the audits. They're so scared of this, right? That's how again, you're over the target. So they're frightened of this. And I see someone mentioning, actually asking Dave Sally in Facebook asking, did you hear today Fulton County found 18,000 ballots missing chain of custody? Actually, absolutely. So what's happening in Fulton County? So this is something that I want to bring to your attention also, because again, this isn't just Arizona, right? We saw whether it was Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, right? We saw what happened the night of November 3rd. You saw the little chart that went whoop like this, right? If you think everyone's now seen the iconic image of the votes coming through in the vertical line that happens, right? So Georgia is, again, one of the places that we all should be focusing on. So I'm just going to show you quickly here just what's happening in Georgia. So this is interesting because, again, you have to look at where's this information coming from, the source, where the source is at. So in a stunning admission about the critical chain of custody documents for absentee ballots deposited in a Dropbox in the November 3rd, 2020 election, a Fulton County election official told the Georgia Star on Wednesday that a few forms are missing and that some procedural paperwork may have been replaced. A Star News analysis of Dropbox ballot transfer forms for absentee ballots deposited in Dropboxes provided by Fulton County in response to an open records request showed that 385 transfer forms out of an estimated 1,500 transfer forms from Fulton said should have been missing, said have been provided or missing, a number significantly greater than a few. Right, so it goes into detail here about how the votes and the numbers, but Again, you're starting to see these things coming out in Georgia, right? As more people are coming in. Again, these are the things that we were talking about back in November and December. Everyone's talking about this, and they're completely, they're doing little memes with the tinfoil hats, and it's the big lie. Well, they're working really, really, really hard to discredit something that they don't want anybody to look into and don't want anybody to see the actual evidence of. So I think that we're starting to see the dam of information start to crack, and that's what we have happen here, right? Is we have what happened in November. Okay, whether X or Y happened, there's one singular truth of what happened, and I think that truth has been something that they are trying so hard to hide because it undermines everything. It undermines everything that they're doing. If you look at Biden making a complete fool of himself over at the G7, this is related to all this. It's like, how did that guy get in? Okay, how did this person get in? And so now, as we're transitioning over to what's happening in G7, to me, this is showing it's the international media. I'll also have a quick side note. My wife is from Australia, and the media there, it's almost like, aside from Sky News, imagine every media over there is just CNN. And this is what happens with a lot of the global media, is that they are just puppeting the same, or parroting the same exact information that the corrupt mainstream media in the US is putting out, whether it's MSNBC, the New York Times, CNN. So a lot of internationally, people might be looking at things and thinking that, gosh, Trump's a big liar, his supporters are all white supremacists, and that Biden is the rightful president, et cetera. That's the narrative that's being fed globally. But what happens when people get to see this supposed elected leader on the global stage? Well, let's just take a look. So, for one, I guess the quick point is that Biden is making a complete fool of himself. Okay, a complete fool of himself over at G7. And I'm just going to cover a small portion of the blunders over there. Now, I'm not doing this just to pick on him. Well, maybe I am. But on top of that, it's just important for people, and this isn't just the Americans, it's for the globe to see who this guy is. Now, unfortunately, it makes America look like a laughing stock. But I think more and more people, especially if they're looking at what was Trump like at G7 versus what is Biden. Look at the pictures of the people surrounding Trump to talk to him at the G7 versus the videos of Biden wandering off in some cafe with his handler wife coming to go get him, right? So what we have happen here, this is that Biden appears 2.5 hours late to a NATO presser, takes questions from pre-approved lists of reporters after a short video or a short speech, and leaves. So what they say here is that 78-year-old Joe Biden was nearly 3 hours late to his NATO presser. No one knew where he was. You could see the tweets from reporters saying, "I've been sitting here waiting for Biden for 2 hours. No, he's not showing up. We have no idea, and the White House doesn't know where he's at either." Right? So the White House gave no explanation for why Joe Biden was late. He was probably eating ice cream and sniffing locals, but I don't know. So it said, Dementia Joe knocked President Trump and stumbled through his NATO teleprompter speech today, mispronouncing names and launching threats at Putin and Russia. After a very short speech and keeping people waiting for 3 hours, he took a few questions from a pre-approved list of reporters and then left. Now, again, this is Biden for everyone to see. Now, this is something I want to show you. This was made into a little bit of a meme, but when asked about Putin, this is the response. Now ask yourself, is this the guy that got 81 million votes in America? Well, let's see. You decide. Play a quick video for you. Oh, I'm not sure if the sound came through on that. Sorry about that, folks. I'm not sure what led to that. But No, yeah, no, thank you, Andrew Jansen. Not worth hearing anyway. And that's exactly it. Is that basically someone asks him about Putin, and he has no answer. He just stumbles. He completely just stumbles and just looks around. Let me see if I can get this. Let me try one more time. That's okay. All right. So again, but you can see the freeze on this man's face as he just looks and stares. Now, what's interesting with this, and the link is in the below if you want to watch it on your own. But what's interesting with this is with Putin is that Putin has come out and said, this is very, because of course we all know about the January 6th, which they've been using as the biggest excuse to come after Trump supporters and conservatives and Christians. They're saying that it was the day of horror. Biden's comparing it to, saying it's the worst attack on our democracy, I think, since the Civil War. I forget what his exact quote is. Some completely just retarded, well, I guess I can call Biden that. I'm not talking about anybody else. I can call him that at will. Answer to what's happening. Okay, so Putin, this is actually very interesting because you know that there's been, at first they said there were 5 deaths on January 6th. And all of a sudden now it comes back to there was only 1 death that was actually related to the event directly. There was no one that was beaten to death, et cetera. There's one person that actually died, and it was Ashley Babbitt. And if you saw the video, I'm not going to play the video on here, but she was shot by some sort of security or, Capitol. It wasn't a police officer, but someone that was on the other side inside Capitol Hill that shot her. And it was completely unjustified. And the media has completely ignored the story. They've covered it up. They've done everything they can to discredit it. And they still refer to January 6th as this bloody day that was murderous. And they've used it as their central theme for going after conservatives. So Putin, which is very interesting, he has spoken positively about President Trump. So he had an interview. And so let me read this to you. So days ahead of his summit with President Biden in Geneva, Russian President Vladimir Putin said the United States was being hypocritical in its criticism of the way his country handles internal dissent. During an interview with NBC News, Putin said Russia was no worse than the United States in this regard, and used the government's handling of the January 6th Capitol riot as an example. So what he says here is that he even pointed to the arrest of hundreds of suspects at the U.S. Capitol riot and the death of one rioter as proof that the U.S. also targets its citizens for their political opinions, just as Russia is accused of stifling dissent. So this is interesting to think about this really quickly, is that would you have ever thought about America as a place where basically that the government is targeting its citizens for their political opinions and even killing some of them? Well, I guess if you've followed the chronicles of the Clintons, you might have seen a lot of suspicious suicides, which that was also something that happened recently. Another person died, the gentleman that had exposed what happened on the tarmac meeting. But again, just crazy to think that this is what's happening in our country. So Putin said, quote, "We have a saying, don't be mad at the mirror if you are ugly." He said, quote, "It has nothing to do with you personally, but if somebody blames us for something, what I say is, why don't you look at yourselves? You will see yourselves in the mirror, not us." Putin showed flashes of defiance when he asked whether it was a coincidence that several other political rivals have been assassinated in recent years. He said, "We don't have this kind of habit of assassinating anybody." He then countered by asking whether the U.S. was guilty of assassinating Ashley Babbitt during the Capitol riot. Quote, "Secondly, I want to ask you, did you order the assassination of the woman who walked into Congress and who was shot and killed by a policeman?" Putin said. "Do you know that 450 individuals were arrested after entering Congress and they didn't go there to steal a laptop? They came with political demands. 450 people have been detained. They're facing jail time from 15 to 20 years, and they came to Congress with political demands. Isn't that persecution for political opinions?" Incredible. So this is just a very interesting turn of events, the fact that Putin is now coming out and asking these questions and calling upon the U.S. government to look at this, because yes, our Constitution protects us. It gives us the right to protest. It gives us the right to ask of the government, what we deserve to be able to ask them. They work for us, right? And here you have Putin. I never imagined the day when Putin is calling out the hypocrisy of what's happening in America, right? I see Cicely Bruner saying, yeah, it's bad when Putin is calling out the corruption. Yeah, there's the quote, right? It's bad when Putin is calling out the corruption. Now, what's happening on Biden's front is that, are they coming out and are they saying that, look, we're sorry, we've mishandled things, we're going to be investigating what happened with Ashley Babbitt. We understand that the citizens are just trying to communicate with their politicians, et cetera, let alone the fact that they're hiding so much evidence of what happened. They're hiding so many of the videos that show who really broke in, the fact that Capitol Police but let them in. I mean, you perhaps have heard the whole phrase false flag, which is referring to basically a stage event to push a particular narrative, right? Whether you want to say it's mass shootings, et cetera. To me, was this an FF? I think even that word gets censored on YouTube. Was this an FF, right? Well, to me, it's looking like it is. It's looking like it was something that was completely orchestrated. They had actors within the groups. They had been infiltrating the groups a lot. Revolver News, if you haven't followed them, they've done some very deep reporting on this that really shows and exposes what they're doing here. And I think basically the whole thing, in my understanding, was an event that was going to be used to then come after Trump and come after his supporters, because they had to have that. They're so scared of us getting the truth out that they have to come after us. They have to label us. And that's what I want to talk about next here, is what they're doing following that, right? So here, again, you've seen this, and I almost hate bringing this up again, but this is what's happening, okay, is that here is the Fox News. So this was earlier this morning. Biden White House strategy for battling domestic terror labels white supremacy militia extremists as biggest threats. I mean, I'm actually really curious. Aside from their whole January 6th thing, when has this ever happened? Didn't BLM cause billions and billions of dollars in damage as they burnt down cities? People were murdered in cold blood. People were beaten in the street to death, dragged out of their cars. Wouldn't BLM be considered the biggest threat if you're looking at domestic terror? Well, no. Supposedly, it's the peaceful conservatives. Those Christians. The Bible tells them to go out and kill and burn down buildings. We know it does, even though they don't do it. So here, I'll read this. It says, the Biden admin on Tuesday unveiled its national strategy for countering domestic terrorism, with officials telling Fox is designed to cut across the political spectrum while warning that white supremacy and militia violent extremists currently present the most persistent and lethal threats. Now, I'll take a quick sidestep with this. Look, what's the bigger picture of this? Is that they're scared of us. They know that the majority of Americans voted a certain way. They know that the majority of Americans are patriots, that we love our country, even people that are in the middle, and a lot of people on the left love their country. They've been confused, but they love their country. So they are so fearful of holding on to this power that they've taken. It's the diamonds that got taken from this, as Trump referenced. They've become so fearful that it's not just enough to get their person in place, but now they have to come after every single threat, and they're freaking out about it. The audits, again, they're freaking out. Exactly, Federalist 2.0. They're having trouble sleeping. Their conscience is disturbing them. Absolutely. So now they're looking for everything they can use, every excuse they can use to fight back, to be on the offense, right? They hoped, I believe, that January 6th was supposed to be much worse than what it really was. That's my understanding based upon my own research. They wanted it to be a much bloodier event with much more death that they could pin on things, so they could use that as an excuse to strip the Second Amendment rights, to come after people that maybe posted a Trump meme around the election time, et cetera. But it didn't, right? If you look at the narrative, you look at the narratives collapsing, what we've seen is the January 6th narratives collapsing. You're seeing Biden on the world stage with no one believing him, everyone making a complete mockery of him. You're seeing that. You're seeing the audits coming through, which is collapsing their narrative of about what happened in November. Let's not forget about the entire narrative of the pandemic, which was, we now see that whole narrative is collapsing with the emails coming out, everything. People are leaving mainstream media in droves and turning to places like the Epoch Times, watching this guy named Man in America, which I hear he's not too bad either. So what's happening is you have everyone is waking up. And that's what, to me, this is what encourages me, is that if you look at all these things and you piece them together, there is actually a lot of positive news that's happening. There's a lot of really positive momentum that's coming forth, and that's what they're scared of. Just wait until Trump rallies start back up again. Just wait until that happens. And something else to mention, which is this is what I'm most excited about, because if you ask yourself, what has been the most effective tool in how they've controlled our country? I wouldn't say it's the media. I'd say it's big tech. Jessica Coy, thank you so much for that donation. So I wouldn't say it's the media. I would say it's big tech, because how do people even access the media? How many of you go home and turn on the TV and watch TV and watch the mainstream media? Perhaps a fair bit of you. But how many of you are on social media and that's how you discover what's happening? And I forget the exact, there's some studies I was looking at recently, a few months back, about how many people actually get their news from big tech. It's amazing the amount of people that get news from big tech. So it's actually big tech, in my opinion, is the biggest threat to our country, because there's so much content out there that, let's just say leading up to November of last year, if you were able to share proper content, if you could find an article that, say, the Epoch Times did, or Breitbart, or Fox, and if you were able to share that with your friends and say, no, like that was a lie, right? The whole Bible, photo op and Trump clearing things out. If you could share that information, let alone if you could share information about what's happening with the thing that they put in you for the big virus today, right? How many of you can't share that information on social media because you get banned? So that's why, in my opinion, it's actually big tech that is more damaging. But where's their hope in that? Well, let's take a look at, jumped ahead of myself there. So Jason Miller, who was the senior advisor, he was, has worked very closely with Trump. I believe that he was in charge of the communications during the Trump's transition. So he has been tapped to head up the Trump's new social media. And there's a few things I want to show on here that he's been active. I pulled up to show you. Okay, so now earlier, and this is 2 hours ago, he actually tuned in and he talked to Newsmax about what's happening with the social media, which I can't wait to go watch what happened on that. But so right here, for instance, okay, so Twitter in the past couple of days has been doing another purge. People are saying that they've had thousands of followers deleted overnight. So Jason Miller is coming out, and so Tim Murtaugh said, he tweeted, this is 23 hours ago, it seems I was stripped of about 1,500 Twitter followers today. Okay, he kind of comments on that. So Jason came out and said 4 hours ago, big tech has launched an all-out war on conservatives. They won't be able to cancel us for much longer. Okay, before that, someone else had said James Woods. I'm not sure if you follow James Woods. Again, he had 3,000 followers deleted. Jason Miller came out. A new project is coming, right? And you see this happening. He's commenting a few different times on this. So what's happening is, and what he's been saying is that Trump is very close to launching his own social media platform, which is supposed to be coming out. I believe that the date was sometime between Labor Day, I think July 4th and Labor Day. So this summer, we're going to be seeing something coming out, Trump's new platform, which I know that many of us were excited about Frank's speech coming out, which unfortunately is still, I'm not sure if it was just buggy from the beginning or it was all the cyber attacks on it, but Trump doesn't do things in a half effort way, to say it politely. Trump does things in a way that's very serious. He doesn't mess around. So Trump's social media platform is, I believe, going to be a game changer, because it's going to allow us to share information with each other, which is really important. That's one of the things that they've really hurt Like when Parler went down, that really hurt the Patriot movement and being able to share information, because us being able to share information with each other helps, the person you share with, you go spread it to your family, et cetera. If there's important information coming out, it's so important that we can communicate. Communication is so key in fighting a battle, which is what we're doing. So the fact that Trump's social media is coming out, it's been confirmed. I think that this is absolutely incredible. It's got me so excited. And this to me is the best news about what's happening right now. And the audits. Well, the thing is also is that when the audits come out, the information comes out, do you think that Facebook or Twitter are going to allow you to share that with people? I doubt it. Right. So again, having a social media platform that we can use to really share en masse is going to be so critical. So I have one more thing to show you, which I gave you an accidental preview earlier. This is just something that I just want to read this article because I think it's really important for us to have a little bit of levity, for us to smile and laugh. It's really one of my main goals in life is to live life with a smile. So here's a Babylon Bee article, which New York Times confuses for disinformation. It's actually completely a satire website where Biden says, and I'll read this to you. And again, to me, this is picking on the overall woke movement. It's not picking on, the gay community or anything like that. This is, in honor of Pride Month, Biden announces he will also sniff men's hair. I came across this. I had to read this with you. So in a televised address this week, President Biden voiced support for the LGBTQ community and promised to honor them with a commitment to not only sniff women's hair, but also men's hair. He says, quote, "Look, I've been sniffing the hair of women and girls for many decades. It's time for me to recognize the accomplishments of the LGBT folks. I'm maybe going to get in trouble for this, but if you're a man, I may just sniff your hair. That's because I'm not homophobic. I ain't afraid to sniff a dude." Come on, man. Biden was then quickly led off the podium by his wife before he could say any more. "Every gender, I'll sniff them all," Biden yelled, protesting as he was dragged out of sight of the crowd. According to sources, no gay men have taken up Biden's on his offer to sniff their hair. However, hundreds of straight male journalists have lined up outside the White House, clapping and cheering, hoping for their chance to be sniffed by the president. Brian Stetler went to bed crying as he had no hair for President Biden to sniff. So again, I had to have a little bit of comedy there to end things. So it's 1:00. This has been a great show. Thank you everyone for joining me today. If you haven't already, if you can like the video, if you can share the video, it really helps. If you can subscribe. Even on Facebook, I'm seeing still somehow under Zuckerberg, I'm getting a lot of activity, a lot of shares happening on Facebook, which is great because, look, we're all in this together. What do we want? We want to protect our country. We want to make sure that our children and grandchildren have a free country to grow up in and to raise their families in. And that's why we're doing all this. And if you're looking to follow me on social media, I highly recommend Telegram, which is in the link below and the description below the video. You find Telegram, Safe Chat. And again, thank you for everybody. Again, Rumble as well. But thank you for coming. This was actually, I think we were over 1,200 people watching the show concurrently across the different platforms. And this doesn't even include Rumble. So maybe we hit 1,500 watching live today, which that's exciting for me. It's not Tucker Carlson level yet, but we're going to get there. So it's a starting place. So thanks again for everyone to come. I'll be back again on Thursday at noon. Again, keep a smile, have a good laugh at these things. We have to keep laughing these days. And I think that it's, this is our time. This is the time for the Patriots to really come together to save our country, to support President Trump, to get him back in office, and to take our country on the proper course it should be, get rid of all this Marxist trash that's indoctrinated half of our country, and just fight the fight. And we're doing it. There's so many indicators that we're doing it. We're winning, and we're going to keep winning. And the rallies are going to be starting soon, and the whole thing is turning, right? We're taking back control, and everything you're doing is making a difference. Thank you.